Well, good evening. I'm Gary Green, and I'm the Genealogist General for the Sons of the American Revolution. Welcome you to our forum tonight. I want to go through a little bit of housekeeping beforehand. See if you can find the bar that seems to float up on mine, and see if you can find your mute button on the far left. And some of you may have it on the top, some of you may have it on the bottom. And if you can mute yourself, go ahead and do that now. Also look at the reactions section while you've got that bar up. If you look at the reaction, there's a place where it says raise hand. If you can find that, make sure you, if you don't find it, say something now, so you'll have to unmute and then say that you can't find it. And we'll use that when we're going through this. Yeah, this is the Genealogist General Forum, 26 July 2020. I thank you for participating. We'll have some introduction. I'm going to discuss some goals. We have some genealogy committee policy changes that we need to address. Have the checklist that many of you are very fond of at this point. I want to talk about the Patriot research system, online application, and upcoming topics, and then we'll get back to feedback and chat. For the introduction, I want to make sure, so far I've recognized Bill Schwetke, the chairman of the Genealogy Committee, who's on board. Bob Coleman, who's the chair of the IT Committee, here with us. Denise Hall, the senior genealogist at Louisville, and Deb Maddox. And then Jim Falkenberry, former genealogist general. Are there any others who consider themselves, we need to recognize that you're here. I stopped at 87 people trying to keep track. Okay, we'll continue.
Gary,
Yes.
Gary, Bill Birchfield is one of our staff genealogists. He's here too.
Oh, thank you. I missed him. I was trying to go through fast. Thank you, Bill Birchfield. Just to give you a background, some of you know who I am from working with me in other places, but I want to let you know I've got a career in the Air Force, a B-52 pilot. I decided to retire and then joined Laney High School as an ROTC instructor for 19 years. I've been in the SAR since 2007. Most of that was because I waited as long as I could with my DAR counterpart or DAR member coming up to me and say, why aren't you in the SAR, almost for 10 years while I was instructing in ROTC, and I finally got around to it. The last 4.5 years, I've been working in the Patriot research system and trying to get that so that it's stable and getting it to work. I think right now we're at 98% of our applications from 1970 to 2022 have been added into the Patriot research system. I'm pretty proud of the volunteers, and many of you are volunteers in that, and I appreciate that. I want to cover some goals that I have for this next year. I want to reduce the backlog of applications that we have at Louisville to 4 weeks. We're at 9 and 12 weeks right now, and the staff is working their tail ends off trying to cut that down. They did a pretty good job last week. I expect they'll get the same results this week. We want to raise the application approval rate. That means no pending, or limit the pending. We want to get that down to 90%, or up to 90%, I guess is a better way. And then I want to reduce the genealogy staff member time per application to 1 hour. Right now it's about 1 hour and 49 minutes, and that's a strange number to come up with, but it's an average, and there's some that just take forever and some that we can get done pretty quickly. So we need to cut that down. Last night, some of you were aware that we had a genealogy committee meeting, and we had 2 policy changes. The first one will impact all of us pretty quickly, and that's 3.5001. we list on the application only information for which a proof is given. That should take you some effort to try to find the proof on it or not put the data or the fact into the application. Obviously, you have to prove the line to get back to the Patriot. But if you're just putting in names or places because you know it, but you can't prove it, we want to stop that. The bracket is not our friend for doing applications. It takes time away from our genealogy staff, and we need to try to clean that up. So that was the first input from the genealogy committee, and then the committee also decided that the Chairman Schwetke could make a decision on typographical and general corrections, and then he would advise his committee afterwards after he's done that. So that's what the second one is. Bill Schwetke, do you have anything to add to that analysis?
No, sir, I don't. It's pretty well covered. And one that took place 2 months ago that has a significant impact on this audience was the change that now for SAR applications, if they're after the 1st of January 2012, that they'll be accepted with all information that is approved on the application, and as long as the application isn't flagged. That's the same way we treat DAR applications now after 1/1/1985. I know some people have expressed concern that took away something. It's giving something. The rest of the applications will be reviewed just as they were before, and what's solidly proven will be accepted. This just allows you to rely on the later applications, 1/1/2012 and later, that it will be accepted unless there's a flag or the information wasn't accepted when it was initially reviewed. And that's all I got. Thank you, sir.
Okay, Bill, you raised some questions here. Bob Cohen, you want to pose your question?
Okay.
Yeah, this is Bob. I got a comment.
Barb's computer.
As chairman of IT, I can tell you that
He's gonna
preliminary
record this, I'm assuming, and then you'll be able to look at it afterwards, right?
discussion about online application is if the proof is not there, it will be deleted, not bracketed. Thank you.
Okay, and John Kraft, Washington State. You got to unmute yourself, John.
You're muted, John. John, you're muted.
There you go.
No. I assume the caveat's still there that it'll be approved, provided the original proof references are still valid. Is that correct?
I'm not exactly sure what you mean.
In other words, if an application was approved, say January of 2012, but the references on that application were referred to, say, a DAR app that was pre-1985, would you still want to update the proof documents?
But what will happen in that case is your application will be approved, and we'll put a flag on the application you relied on so that it cannot be used any further.
Okay.
Chris Smith.
Yes, if we believe an application could be flagged by SAR, do we have a point of contact person we should be dealing with? Because this has happened actually in the Maryland Society, where an uncle had joined, and then we realized once we signed off on it, assumed that it was valid, and then come to find out it's still sitting in the pending thing because of whatever issue. So the question is, are we going to have a point of contact person to say, we don't want to send something to national if you believe we're going to flag it? we'd rather hold it back.
And Gary, I realize we're kind of hijacking your presentation here.
These are good questions, please.
It is. And if there's a flag on it, we're trying to find a way to be sure that you know through the PRS that there is a flag. And right now there are known applications with issues that we have not made public that information, and we want to. We're working that. However, if that application you're relying on is 1112 or later, that application will be approved, but at that point you will have brought to our attention the previous issue. If it's an older one, then there is a problem in accepting what's in it. Did that answer your question?
Yes, that answers the question. The application that we had in question was from 1996. So I guess assume that they saw other evidence otherwise to pend it at national, and we basically had no knowledge of it.
The correct term here, I believe, should be it's flagged. And
Okay.
yes, some have been identified with issues, and we need to find a way to make that public.
Okay, thank you.
You know it.
Bill, you're going to be a popular guy here. We've got two more and then we're going to move on. So
Okay, let's do
Dave?
two more and see if we can damage by popularity. Go ahead.
And now I gotta figure out how I'm gonna get
David
the sound
Perdue.
to come on.
Yes,
Uh,
on that May 5th rule, the May ruling on the,
How do I get to sound?
on
How
the
do I
May
even
ruling
stop
on
this?
212, 1112, it talked about applications prior to 1112
What if I don't want it to be like that?
could be reviewed. I hope you heard that. And
And I didn't really get what was important. It got cut out. Try again, please.
okay, in the ruling back in May, in that FAQ, it talked about applications before 1/1/2012 being reviewed, and it seemed to indicate that those applications, if reviewed, could be used. It's unclear what that means, and in the guide, it talks about reviewing DAR applications, and it has 3 rules there. You may have seen my email. So we would like a clarification on what that means.
It actually, for those that are prior to 1112, it's no change than the way we've treated all SAR applications previously. And we made several years ago a change and established a date for the DAR, which you alluded to. The earlier applications, there's a problem with the DAR. We can't go to the vault and see the documentation for a DAR. For our own, the staff genealogists go to the vault, get the documentation, and look at it, and it must satisfy our current policy, or it will not be
I have
accepted.
applications that were bracketed, but the documents were sent.
So I don't want to spend a bunch of time on it, but
Yeah.
maybe you could write down what the procedure is sometime and tell us how we can use those pre-1112 applications for proof.
Okay, sure.
Thank
Ron
you.
Bearden.
Thank you. I have a question I'd like to ask about center checked items on DAR papers
I don't know.
or
Well,
SAR.
there's Jerry Pinkerton. I didn't know what he looked like.
But,
There he is, right there.
Mr. Chairman, I believe there are people with open mics that are talking over us.
Dennis,
Dennis Beckham, you need
Dennis
to
Beckham.
mute yourself.
Thank you.
I'll ask the question again.
Yeah.
When a DAR or SAR paper record copy has center check marks, we don't always know exactly what is correct in that generation or what's been presumed. So how should we put, if we're using a center check DAR paper as documentation for an SAR paper, should we list those items on an SAR, a new SAR application if they've been center checked on a DAR paper? This may be a question for some of the staff genealogists. I don't know who needs to answer that question.
Yeah, I have an answer to it, but I'll
Okay.
defer to a staff genealogist. Denise, if you want to chime in on that to give a more correct answer, then I
Sure.
might go ahead.
Ron, we just look at the DAR application as, even if it's center checked, the center checks are supposed to indicate that all the data from the name across to the date field, across to location field are verified. I have to put quotations marks around that because what it is presume that nothing changed from their previous application that it was based on. So we don't change anything or bracket it unless they have bracketed something within the center check generations, or they have made entered amended data. We just make it match. We know that going backwards, we see them rely on earlier and earlier applications, that some of the early ones didn't even have fields for locations, whatever, but they still present it that way. We presume to take it we presume that it's correct by DAR standards. And so the center checks would indicate that that's what DAR showed on that center checked application.
So they're okay to list.
To leave it in there, right?
Okay. Thank you, Denise.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Bill, and thank you, Denise, for getting roped into this discussion, but your expertise was helpful. Thank you. Okay, now there we go. I want to talk a little bit about the Patriot research system. Reason I want to get this is I've got a strong desire that every chapter registrar should be a volunteer in the Patriot research system for selfish reasons. Not that I need you to be a volunteer and put data in there. I need you to be a volunteer who can look at the applications that are coming into the system, because they're coming in right now. We're at maintenance status for 1970 to 2022, meaning all the applications that we're aware of in that time frame are in the PRS. In fact, the 22 July apps that were approved on the 22nd of July are in the PRS right now. So as you're preparing applications, and you need to look at what you put in to find out what was approved and what mistakes you might have made unintentionally, so that we can cut down on brackets. Brackets are not our friend. We do not like brackets. Let's get rid of brackets. Another thing that's coming along is supporting documentation. And this is going to be probably my lifelong venture, because I don't think it'll happen in my lifetime, but we're working to scan all the documentation that are in the vault at Louisville. We are about 2/3 of the way through the A's in the population. That means we've got a lot of documents to scan, and we as one person scanning and one person taking staples. So it's going to be a while to do that, but we're working on it. Bill mentioned a little earlier that we're working on flagging patriots and lineages. We're trying to find a way to accomplish that for legacy flagged patriots and lineages, meaning they're in the PRS. We know they're there. We need to be able to put it so that you're aware of it. Going back to the volunteer advantages, if you can volunteer to be in if you would consider doing that, you can then see these apps as soon as they're approved. You can identify the mistakes that you've made, commission and approved applications. Normally, this chapter registrar is not going to get a chance to see these applications. This is the avenue that you can do it, and you can be active for yourself. And the other advantage is you get to see all the applications for your state society. So if you've got a chance to look at them, you can go back and say, oh, that's the application that's going to work for me. and help with your research for your next guy. So that's my shameless plug to get in there and be a volunteer in the PRS. The online application is starting to come. We are working at it at the XCOM level, meaning the executive committee has assigned a project manager to look at it. They're going to explore and attempt to fix many of the flaws that have been there since 2015. This is the first time that anybody in the SAR has worked on this since it was put in 2015. In spite of that, we've got 40% of our population actually using the online application right now and working around with the flaws. So what I'm going to tell you today is that we're going to have training in the use of the online application and other capabilities and concepts in October of 2022. And it's going to be a class that you can take. It's 6 weeks, about an hour and a half per class. And you will be fairly pleased, I think, if you can take that class. We're going to offer it again in January 2023. So this is a chance for you to see how to work the online application. The only caveat that I have is I would recommend you try to do one application in the online application, just so that you can get through with the frustrations early on and then be able to get some instruction on how to do that. Upcoming topics, I'm planning on doing these forums fairly routinely, about once a month. And I'm going to cover these topics along the way. And I ask anybody who feels comfortable in these areas to chime in when we get to doing these, because I'm not an expert. I just know that we've got to talk about these things. I've looked at 36,000 plus applications over the last 4.5 years. And there's a reason that we need to cover these topics, because the same mistakes are being done all across the country. And we need to kind of clean that up and be able to talk about it. So we're about 20 minutes into this, and we've had some discussion already. Is there anything from chat, Dennis, that we need to discuss?
Excuse me, several of them have already been answered in chat or on screen. The one that just came in here a few minutes ago from John Anderson in Texas, somehow the approved data from an online application should auto interface to the PRS system. Maybe somebody can answer as to what that possibility is in the future.
I'm going to ask Bob Cohen to step in, take the shot.
Thank you, Gary. As Gary indicated earlier, nothing has been done on the online application since what, 2015?
Yeah.
And that's beginning to, and we're right now in the phase of getting input from a small group of individuals, and it'll get bigger as time flows on. But one of the original designs was that once an application was approved, it would be automatically imported into the member database, lineage and all. So now that's kind of be redirected. So most of the lineage will go into the PRS, and then the other would stay in the main member database. And by the way, at some time frame, those will all be one database. But that's kind of a, I guess, a 10,000 foot view of what's in the plans. It was planned all along that that would happen. It just takes time and money. And we get about 100,000 a year into IT, and fortunately, we went, let's see, that's only been since about 2012 or maybe 11 that's been coming in. Before that, we got absolutely nothing in IT. And so we have spent some time catching up, and now we're spending time working on the different items. The member database is just about ready to synchronize totally with the red, and I'm talking about the blue database, synchronized with the red. And to give you a little bit of background, if you don't know it already, the red database is used only by staff, and it synchronizes to blue database, which those of us in the country or in the field can use. Used to be, there was a synchronization to yellow, but yellow, as if you've ever used it, know it's been archived. And so now you're putting on blue to look up your information. And that eventually will happen. It's just time, and we got to get all the bugs that are there now cleaned up, wiped out, revisions done before that'll get worked on. Thank you.
Chris Smithson?
Yes, do we have a point of contact person for issues with the online application system? Since we're going to go that route of updating it in the near future, because there's a couple issues we had in Maryland that need to be addressed as well as nationally as well.
The fellow that, well, send it to me, Chris, but I will tell you we have one fellow, Jim Osborne from Missouri, who is actually heading a committee of trying to gather all these melodies on the online system and then putting them out to the mission data folks in a sequence. He's kind of put we've got the list. We prioritize which ones really irk us the most, and then we're working on those. But Jim Osborne of Missouri is probably the best point of contact.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anybody have any last minute questions, concerns, comments?
Yes, I do.
Okay, Emery?
Yeah, I'm here in Colorado, and we go through your application manual and we go through your checklist, and we find some contradictions. It says information shouldn't be repeated in the reference area that's shown on this, the documents provided. Okay, let's talk about birth certificates. A birth certificate just indicate birth certificate or BC. The information on the birth certificate should stand for itself. There's no relationship repeated in the reference section at all. We don't have to enumerate whose birth certificate is. It's there in black and white. Same with a marriage certificate. We say a marriage certificate, and then you say John married to Jane. Well, isn't that the purpose of a marriage certificate?
Okay, so your concern is with the application preparation manual description request?
Well, that and then the checklist. I mean, we're citing stuff and then we're contradicting it.
Okay, I'm not sure which area you're saying. We're citing the manual and then we're.
Specifically, you cite the marriage certificate and then you say John Smith or John Doe married to Mary Doe. Well, isn't that the purpose of a marriage certificate? Just put marriage certificate and be done with it. MC.
Okay. I will have to defer that to the genealogy committee who's working the application preparation manual.
And it's the same with birth certificates. We put 2 birth certificates there in the order that the application's arranged. The genealogist that's reviewing it can say, hey, these are the 2 birth certificates representing those 2 people in that generation. It shortens the application preparation time. It also shortens the reviewing time.
Okay. Thank you, Emery.
Thank you.
Gary, I have a comment on that.
Okay.
One reason I can think of for having that information in there is they know if those papers get dropped, they know how to get reassembled. If they're not there, then they got to study how to reassemble it.
Okay. Any other comments?
I have a comment. This is Daryl Hensley out of Indiana.
Yes.
One of the problems that I have is that in order to do an online application, many of the applicants that I'm dealing with are not computer literate. Is there a way for the chapter genealogist or the chapter registrar or the state genealogist to register that person's account, do the application online, and then have it available to you guys, even though they may not be capable of doing it because of their computer literacy? Certainly some of the registrars and chapter genealogists and state genealogists can, and there's got to be an easier way of doing that. I think some of the requirements to create an account should be loosened so that we can get the application on, even if it's, the state genealogist email or the chapter genealogist email, whoever helped prepare the application. If communication goes back and forth, it goes back to at least the person that helped upload that application versus the actual person who may not even have an email account.
The answer to your question or comment is probably that's what we want to do, but that it isn't in the. It's one of the fixes that we've addressed for finding. We've got to be able to transfer it. You should be able to start it as a chapter registrar and then say, I'm going to transfer it to Joe Bag of Donuts, whoever he is, once I've got it in there so that it's his, instead of crushing your account. But I don't know for the guy who really doesn't know how to do computers, whether or not you're ever going to be able to help him. You may just have to do it on your own as the chapter registrar, and then the state can see it as well if you've got this.
If I do it under my account, then people will think it's my supplemental. You see what I'm saying?
No, they won't.
No,
No,
they
they
won't.
won't.
You've got you're going to put it in there. You control it is all. Nobody's looking at it except maybe your state registrar, whoever the state guy is going to be able to see it. But it's not like you're hijacking anything. You can still work it.
Mike Sullivan, Kentucky.
Go ahead.
My comment about that is regardless of who inputs the application, once he signs it up and assigns it to a chapter, then the chapter and the state registrar can both see it.
That's true. Okay, Dennis.
Yeah, to another point to this, 2 points. One is a little facetious, but the first one is if the guy can't even enter a username and a password to get on it, it isn't going to matter what's in there because he will never see it. What we do in Michigan is we offer the choice of an applicant, but basically we say if he wants to be able to see it, he should go in and create the guest account. All he's got to do is put in his name and a user word and a password, and then we have him start the application just that first screen. It just has his name and puts in his state society and chapter, and obviously it's a regular application. That's all he has to do. Then he will always see it. And like somebody else just said, chapter registrar, state registrar, whoever's other people like that who may do the actual application will be able to see it, edit it, fill it out, and the guy can always look at it. But he's got to at least be able to create his own account, and all he has to do is fill out that first screen, put in his name and the state and the chapter, and then he'll always be able to see his application.
William Wilson.
Afternoon, Gary. Question on supplementals. I'm a new registrar here in South Carolina, and the issue that I'm running into with supplementals is that they do not come through the chapter registrar. They come directly to me. And I'm finding that a large portion of them that come to me are really full of things that should not be there. And I had one about 2 months ago where I had 12 exceptions on that one application. I sent it back to the compatriot that sent it directly to me. And his response back was, I kind of thought that might have some issues with it. My question is, why do supplementals, why are they permitted to come straight to the state registrar instead of the chapter registrar?
That's up to your chapter.
Yeah, I think that is a state issue as well as we've written it into our policy that you don't have to have a signature other than the applicant for supplements. So that kind of lends itself to doing that. My recommendation is that you've come up with a state policy that says everything needs to go through the chapter registrar. So
That's what I did, and I
Okay.
did implement it. And the response back I get is, well, it's in the manual.
yeah.
Minute to do it. So we're overriding it at the state level, but I didn't know that we could do that. And I appreciate that answer back. That answered my question, really.
The other opportunity I would give it is the checklist that everybody is enjoying. I would force that on anybody who puts a supplement. So they've got to go through and answer every one of those questions, all 4 pages, and get them some training because they are the rookies.
Right.
Your chapter registrar has a clue. He's pretty accomplished, but the guy who's doing a supplement for the first time is a rookie, and we don't have any training for them other than that checklist, which is very thorough. So that would be my second alternative, is to send
May
the
I ask you one other question?
Sure.
It has to do with the variety of application forms themselves. I don't quite understand why we have WordPerfect and PDF formats. And the reason I object to them in our state, and I've asked everybody to go to an online application, one of the forms, and I can't remember the format of it, the generation is on the front, the proof of the generation is on the back. And you spend a lot of time flipping back and forth with that particular form. Are there any plans to go to a total online application in the near future?
Well, the near future is once we fix the online application, yes, that's what our goal is to go to one application. And the WordPerfect or the Word document probably will go away first. The PDF, what I'm being told is they can feed it into the online application. Those who are adamant about doing PDF will be able to do it, but then it'll just, there'll be a workaround that allows them to funnel it into the online application without a big to-do. I don't know how that's done. It's computer geek for me, but otherwise, I think our goal is to go to one application.
Good. Thank you very much.
Okay. John Kraft?
There, I think I unmuted myself. I see an interesting question in the chat, and I kind of wanted to mention it. Harry Winkler of I don't know where, he asked to please amend the online memorial application so the death of the person in Generation 1 can be inserted during the preparation instead of after the app is printed. And I just wanted to make a comment on that. There's a very, very easy way around that. All you have to do is, after you've entered the Generation 1 and the data you have, insert a generation before that and save it. Save the whole thing. That will open up that you don't even have to fill in the blanks, just insert Generation 1. That'll open up Generation 2 so that you can enter the death location and date, and then save it, and then go back and delete the blank Generation 1. And it will be there. It may not show, on the entry section, but it will print out with the date of the deceased memorial application.
Thank you, John. Appreciate that workaround. Emery? Okay, Emery, if you're talking, I think you're muted still.
I'm sorry. I even had it highlighted to unmute. We actually do the same thing here in Colorado. We send all our supplementals through the registrars for a couple of reasons. One is they're brand new. They need to look at applications to see how to do them and what's expected of them. And there's really very little difference in the supplementals, except how some of the references are done. And it carries forward to the new member applications that they're responsible for. And it kind of cuts down my workload. The other thing is I've kind of centralized the printing of all applications so that whatever changes are necessary or what comes out of the genealogy people at National, I can incorporate in the applications before they go to the applicants for signature. So it cuts down return time to the applicants and the registrars and me. The only thing we're subject to is the mail system.
Okay, sounds like a good maneuver. William Wilson?
William is muted.
Yeah, he's trying to find the mute.
Gary, I apologize. You'd already answered my question. I did not take the chat out or my hand down.
Okay. Chris Smithson?
Yes. Last year, when I was at the Atlantic Middle States meeting, one of the things that I announced was I had started a specialized Google group for those of us doing applications that have pending applications that need assistance throughout the United States. Whether you need a copy of a will, whether you need a land record, whether you need a tombstone picture, whatever. For those of you on here, I can put the address in the chat for you. But we have about 25 to 30 registrars throughout the country that are already in the group. And whether you have a problem with trying to connect generations together, my thing is working together throughout the country, and hopefully we can cut down the backlog of pending application by working together.
Chris, I need you to get in touch with John Schatzel of Kansas. And
Okay.
he's on the genealogy committee, and he's running the committee for get the right term here.
Are you coming next week to New Jersey, Gary?
Yes, I am.
Okay. I'll
John
be there.
John is the head of the committee of assistants for the genealogy committee, and you would be a welcome member of that committee if you wouldn't mind. 'Cause
Okay.
he's doing it from Kansas. You got it from Maryland. We can make that work. So.
Okay.
Ron Bearden. Ron Bearden. There you go.
Sorry, I heard a ding about that time. I want to bring something to everyone's attention. For some time now, we have been including documentation on non-bloodline spouses. And that's pretty much what's expected, so that anything that's on the front of the application, we have documentation for. But on the back of the application, right above where you enter documents, where it says references, proof is needed only for individuals in the bloodline. That's still on the applications, and it's on the Cox, it's on the PDF for sure, because that's primarily what we use in Alabama.
Right.
And I hadn't noticed it until recently that it's still on there. Maybe if we can get some application revisions, that probably needs to come off.
Yes, very good. Thank you. Steve Miller, Arizona.
Yes, my question goes back to the staff genealogist that talked about the center check applications. I assume that she was talking about the DAR thing that we all went through. I just recently found with a person that was applying, had sent me a copy of an SAR application from the mid 1960s, and it was center checked. Now, do I assume that that's the same as the DAR, that all that stuff was approved from the name to the dates and places?
I'll try to field that question, but back even 25 years ago, SAR applications were marked very oddly. I don't think it's the same as DAR center checks. They barely made marks on them at all. And I understand that probably the early 2000s, when Susan Akery was in the department, she brought up and instituted the practice of marking, using verification marks on what was proven, which was apparently novel. I don't know why they didn't do that before. Because when we look at those older applications, there's all these weird, odd marks that are that are kind of disjointed. So I would not consider, well, one from 1960, or yeah, we're not gonna, they don't have any, we wouldn't have any documentation on file. I would use them possibly as clues, but don't rely on them. I hope that answers your question.
Daryl Hensley.
Yeah, one of the issues that I run into is sometimes I have to find a document for an applicant, and in Family Search, many of the counties have a lockout on reviewing the files. You have to go to an LDS library or affiliated public library, which is time consuming. Is there a way to work with Family Search to get the registrars and the genealogists' IP addresses approved to get access? Because they'll benefit from the information that we're going to be giving into the SAR in the long run. I was just wondering if there's a deal could be worked out where we could have that access, and it would cut down on, in some instances, on application time.
Okay, let me.
Can I answer that?
Go ahead.
I was actually typing this answer out, but as an IT guy and a genealogist, I'm here to tell you, one, there's no way Family Search is going to let that happen. There's absolutely no way. I mean, that's why they lock them down in the first place. They want to control that information. You know, whatever their reasons, that's what they want to do. But secondly, and the more important reason, your IP addresses at home rotate. You do not have a fixed IP address, and your IP address gets reassigned to you every so often by your internet provider. And so logistically, it is physically impossible for 90% of the people to be able to, because you would have to give a fixed IP address to Family Search. Having dealt with them while I was at KHS, I understand how they work. They can't deal with a roving IP range. It has to be a fixed IP address. And because 99% of the people in the country don't have a fixed IP address, you just can't do it.
We do have at SAR headquarters, we have an institutional relationship, institutional account with Family Search. So we can get to, we have it in the library, and we in the genealogy department can get to it, to most of those records. I think there's still some that are locked out. And from what I understand, also, some of those documents that they have online or have had online and disappeared were because they had contractual agreements with the with wherever the agency or wherever that they were, that they got them from. So to use them only for a certain amount of time. But come on down to Louisville and you can get online in the library.
Right, and any Family Search affiliate library, and there are hundreds around the country, they have access to the same information. The only things that are locked down at this point are, as Denise said, contractually limited. But the reason that they're not going to let the random individual, unless you're in the church, if you're a member of the church, then you can log in under your personal and you can look at anything you want to.
But I know from the local library here in Jasper, Indiana is affiliated, and I go there, but I mean, their computers are so old that the speed time of pulling the data and going through the data is so slow. It's just frustrating.
Oh, I understand that, but the real reason that Family Search doesn't want to give everybody access is because they're driving traffic into the affiliate libraries. If they let everybody have access to it, even for a fee, then that wouldn't drive traffic anywhere. And they're driving traffic into their affiliate libraries, and that is their whole mission in life when it comes to doing this stuff. And so you're never going to convince them to do otherwise.
Well, they certainly wanted convincing when they asked for my help to do the 1950 census review with them.
Yeah. They'll open it up for their own purposes.
Okay, Chris, you got your hand up?
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can.
My question was put into the chat earlier, so I don't know if someone was able to answer it, but I didn't see it because I had to log out and I'm on the road. I had a question about the supplementals that I've been sending down. I sent like 46 for my son, and they were sent in batches of 5. And when I did them, I did the batches of 5 where the same first 5 or 6 generations were all the same. But then when I got them back with approvals, there were a lot of check marks missing for things that were on some and not on others. So it was inconsistent as to what was checked off as being sent down and validated, but yet they were all for the same generation. So they should have all had the same consistent check marks. Then when they showed up in the PRS, the people who were entering them were taking out the data that was not checked. So I sent a letter down and I explained it, but no one's ever responded. Now I've sent 3 letters and no one's ever replied. And I'm not sure who I'm supposed to be sending it to or how to get that addressed, because one, if I don't get them addressed on the record copy, then the PRS system will never enter the data, yet it's all been validated. And the only way you would know that is looking at the other supplementals that had the same data and does show that it was checked off.
Okay, you should send an email back to the person who worked on the application, who reviewed the applications.
And I typically would find out where. How would I know that?
Well, usually the person signs off with his or her initials on the back of the application.
Okay. So if I look on the back of each supplemental, then I would see who it was. If they're no longer there, because in some cases they were temporary people, I remember were involved, some that are no longer there, who would I then send it to?
Just send it to me,
Okay. And you are?
Denise Hall, and it's dhall@sar.org.
Okay.
Or if you look
And
up the ACN, if you can email me the ACN numbers you're questioning, I'll be able to pull it up in the database, find out who worked on them, and work out the corrections that need to be done.
Okay. So I've sent down packets already that showed, I sent the documents again and listed out specifically what was not checked off. So should I send that letter via email or should I send the hard copy? Because I was mailing stuff.
If you have a lot of documents, you're going to have to mail it. But if you're just sending a letter or an email, just email it to me.
Okay.
And I'll try to
And
track
just
it
list
down.
out.
Now, let me go ahead and add, when you're sending in groups of supplementals, make sure that family members are on the same transmittal and with all the documentation is with those and not separated, so that the person who gets the first packet doesn't know to go look at some of the other packets for the documents, if that makes sense. They get
absolutely.
separated.
And that's that's the thing that's confusing me, because that's what I did. I would send one set of documentation for the supplementals, a group of 5. The first, like I said, the first 5 or 6 generations were already proven. And so I didn't have to resend some of the documentation. So
Right.
it would have been, say, a prior application that had all that already approved.
Just make sure they're all listed on the same transmittal, and all the applications and the documentation are clipped together with that one transmittal. If they're on separate transmittals, they will get separated.
No, I did. They were all on one
Okay.
transmittal. Yep.
Okay, then I'd have to look at it. Just email me.
Okay.
And we'll figure it out.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Mhm.
Okay, Emery, you still had your hand up for a little while. Did you have another question, or you need to lower your hand?
We've already talked about it. I don't know how the hand got still raised. It just
Okay.
didn't get put down.
Well, I'm going to call this the end of the meeting, and I want to thank all the guests who got shanghaied into having to respond. But I think this was a pretty productive interface. Genealogy committee, the genealogy staff, the IT committee. So we're not here to fight each other in that sense. We're here to make these things right all the way across the board. So I really appreciate the genealogy staff participating tonight. I didn't know what to expect, but thank you, Bill. Thank you, Deborah. Thank you, Denise. And Bill Schwecke, you took another arrow, but you survived. Okay, any last minute calls? Going once, going twice. Thank you, Dennis Van Warmer, for keeping track of the chat. Have a
Hey,
good night,
Gary.
folks. Yes.
Gary, Ron Beard, we didn't ever get to the checklist. I found a couple of things that I thought were a little contradictory. I'm not against the checklist at all. I'm just gonna email you my thoughts, and then you just take a look at those things and see if maybe they need to be edited just a little bit. Okay?
That'd be great. Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, thank you, folks. Appreciate your help.
Thank you.